Good morning, guys. So today we are focusing on transforming commands, and we will be looking at some of the extremely or most used use cases. So please do refer in order to derive the maximum value out of this particular video. And also encourage you to have an eye on a video description as well, because I intend to make some of the material available in the form of pre-signed URLs to download occasionally for subscribers with respect to Splunk fundamentals 1, 2, 3, administration, enterprise security, and Phantom to keep the engagement level little high. Okay, so without any delay, we will get it started. So for example, before I get started, I really want to all of you to have a glimpse at what are the scenarios we're going to cover, because I really want all of you to see this particular video till the very last. So for example, we'll be looking at eval, how to use the eval and count together. I think you must have seen this kind of the command or use cases in many of the correlation queries. We will be looking at char command as an alternative to stat, because it does allow use of some kind of the argument like span. And we will be looking at rare and top. We will also be looking at event stats and stream stats, and you must have seen in many of the use cases as well. And for the investigation purposes, we are always interested in when was the last event we have received from one particular host, or maybe the source or source type. So for any investigation issues, almost we are interested into that. And we will be significantly focusing on values and list. So this particular command you must have seen in every correlation query, whatever the dashboard you have seen on the Splunk, right? So it's very important. I have learned in the Splunk fundamentals 3. And so for example, we will also be looking at distinct count as well. It's also very important that we always want to learn the data is being ingested from how many source or source types or how many hosts, and then we are interested in listing all the source or source types and host, so that therefore we can utilize to create some of the alerts, or keep an eye on our environment. Okay, so without any delay, we will get it started. So as I said, we will be starting with the values and the list command first. So just allow me a little time. Source type is equal to so we will be focusing on status is equal to, we will be focusing on the all the error codes above 500. So let's say 5 star, and stats count as maybe HTTP error codes, and we want to list all the all the URIs for each for each status or each HTTP error code. So values, maybe a URI path as maybe let's say unique URIs, okay, by let's say status. So for example, you can see for every status, so these are the basically unique URIs. For example, card.do, category.screen. So it's basically help us, for this particular status code 500, how many unique URIs are existing altogether. So let us also try to have a look at the list command as well. So list command will basically give you all the occurrences of all the URIs, right? So it will not give you all the unique URIs, but it will give you all the occurrences of that particular URI under one particular status code. So let's try to have a look at that. So for example, you can see, as I said, it will give you all the occurrences of that particular URI. So you might see the repetition as well. So depending on the use cases, you may want to have a, you may want to use, or you may want to decide to use the list, or maybe the values along with the stats or D stats. So let us try to look at one more demonstration. So just give me a second, maybe so for example, stats count by category ID, stats count by category ID, and maybe values. Just give me so stats count with the category ID, and here maybe values. We want to list all the product which basically falls under one particular category. So maybe product ID as maybe products. Let us see whether it will give us the result in an intended format. Yeah, so you can see for one particular category ID, you can see that there are two products which falls under the category of the accessories. Similarly, three products under the arcade, and so you can do like this. And so it's again the very important so for example you may want so for example if we are using the list here. So for example it will give you all the occurrences. It will not give you all the unique values, but it will give you all the occurrences of all the products under one particular category. So for example you can see that the entire or sheer repetition of all the products under the accessories. So it will try to list all the events. So in this particular case it is not very relevant, so we will keep it to the values. So I hope so it might help you understand the use of the values and list. So let us move on to the some other commands as well. So now we'll be looking at the distinct count. I will show you very quickly. So for example, stats distinct count. Maybe we are interested in all the distinct client IP. So as number of IPs. So yeah, so it has given us a result. So there are basically 182 number of unique IP addresses. However, this particular command is very resource intensive, so please use it for the specific purposes. We may want to use estimated distinct count as well, and as an alternative to the distinct count, because that particular command is quite resource intensive. So we almost get a similar kind of the result, but however this particular command takes relatively less amount of the compute as compared to the distinct count. So we just wanted to have a fair idea how many the number of the unique client IP addresses are existing in this particular case. So we can also do some kind of the aggregation. So I will quickly show you, and then we will move on to the some other cases as well. So for example, that we can use many of the functions along with these stats. So for example, max bytes, and maybe min bytes, sum bytes. So I just wanted to demonstrate the use of some of the aggregation commands which might be useful. Bytes. So for example, this is just a demonstration, right? I mean, for example, you may want to use this particular command for the aggregation purposes. So you can use all these particular functions alongside the stats command. Okay, so we will move on to some other cases which are important in our case. So for example, let's say, okay, the first we will be focusing on the first event or the last event for these specific purposes. So for example, let's say we have a problem with respect to one particular host or one particular IP, or we are not receiving the log ingested from that particular source. So we are interested in seeing the timestamp when did we receive the last event corresponding to that particular host or source type. So obviously I'm trying to draw the analogy. This is nothing but I'm just using the tutorial data, which is not the operational data or security data for that matter. So maybe 117.21.246.164. So this is the client IP. This is the IP address I am interested in. So maybe stats latest. So I'm only interested in the last, the last event with respect to this particular IP address, and we may want to have a look at, for example, the timestamp. When did we receive the last event with respect to this particular client IP address? So for example, we can see, so this is the last time, this is the timestamp, so this is the last event which we have received corresponding to this particular client IP. And so, as you know, right, I mean, hyphen raw or underscore raw, this is also one of the internal fields. If, for example, we can also try to, look at by time as well. And many of times, we are interested in the time stamping as well, and we try to basically look at, when did we receive the last event. So we can also try to do like this. So for example, so this is the last time we did receive event corresponding to this particular client IP address, and many a times it basically helps, to investigate. It's just act as a first, first starting point for doing the investigation. When did we receive the last event corresponding to one particular source, the source type or host maybe. Okay, so moving on. Similarly, we can use other time-based functions as well. Like we have used the latest. If we are interested in for example, we have discovered the new source or source type or maybe the host. So maybe we are interested in the when did we receive the first. Maybe the first event corresponding to that particular host or source. If you are interested in that kind of the stuff, you may want to use this particular command as well. So fair enough. I mean, I just hopefully it might help. So let us move on to the some other stuff. We will be having an opportunity to look at the use of the event stats and event stats as well as stream stats. So since we are talking about the event stats, I always try to remember the event stats with two words. One of the word is summarize, and the second word, if we want to draw the relative comparison. So in the demonstration, we are anyways going to see that how these two particular words are important, and it might help you differentiating with the stats also. So for example, so let us try to construct a scenario before we use the event stats. So maybe we are interested in the all the events with respect to the purchase as of now. Okay. So just give me a second. Yeah, so for example, we will be starting with some of the basics: stats, count, by, category ID, and sorry, category ID. So this is the basic command. I think. So for example, we are just trying to look at the count with respect to all the categories. So for example, now let's say we are interested in calculating the average count. The average purchase with respect to average purchase for all the categories putting together. Event count. So maybe average count, sorry, event stats, average count as average, and maybe then we are interested in listing the maybe a table, category ID, and just a second, count and average. Okay. So for example, you can see, we were talking about, when we are talking about the event stats, the summarize is also one of the word that basically, so basically it is, for example, we are seeing the average count, for every average purchase for all the categories putting together. So it may help in drawing the comparison. For example, the purchase with respect to the category accessories is more is relatively greater as compared to the average of that. And so so I mean, it helps in basically summarizing. It may help you in drawing the comparison as well. So for example, you can also use for example, if we are only interested in the categories which is recording the sales higher or greater as compared to the average, so we can use the where clause, where count is greater than average. Okay, so for example, I think so we have gotten the list of all those categories which are recording the purchase greater as compare purchase greater than that of the average sales for all the categories put together, right? So so that is the reason, so just remember, if you are interested in the summary, if you are interested in drawing a comparison, you may want to look at the event stats. Okay, so I will move on to so we can also draw an analogy. For example, if you have put many of the servers in a cluster, and if you are really interested, some of the boxes have the relatively lower level of the resource utilization as compared to the average, and if you're really interested in that kind of the host names, good starting point. If you really want to know, why one or two servers have the relatively higher resource utilization with respect to the above servers, you may want to list those particular host names. So I'm just trying to draw an analogy. I don't have the operations data as of now, but might be useful for the platform operations engineer, or the support engineer, right? So without any delay, I will be moving on to stream stats as well. So I think we have learned in a fair degree about the event stats. So let us try to look at the stream stats. So stream stats is basically, I mean, we normally use for the live streaming data, and it's a very resource, intensive operation basically. So we always try to calculate some kind of, metrics for the data which is ingested or which is live streaming, and we always do that for 5 or 10 minutes, for the latest 5 minutes or the latest 10 minutes, and it might give you the some kind of metrics for the data which is streaming into the Splunk environment, right? So just give me a second. Yeah, so in for the demonstration purposes, in our case, we will be looking at let's say the purchase of the categories. Now, what is the number of the purchases all the categories are recording in the last 5 minutes? So I am taking it all time because in my case I don't have the real time data. But for example, if you really want to look at some what are the purchases corresponding to all the category IDs for the last 5 minutes or for the last 10 minutes, we can really do that. So just stream stats. Just a second. So maybe we are trying to count. So stats count as total purchase by category ID, and we are only looking at the maybe two highest categories, two categories which is recording the highest number of the sales, or maybe three, and so minus total purchase. Okay, so this is the normal command, but if we really want to have a ranking kind of the stuff, we really want to rank just total. So if we really want to rank, the purchase of all the respective categories in terms of how much count is corresponding to that particular category, we can also use the stream stats command. Stream stats count as rank. So for example, maybe I can make it here 5. So for example, we have done the ranking of all the categories IDs, which is recording the sale or recording the purchase in the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever the time duration you have given. So as per the count, if the count is the highest, it is ranking the category. It is basically the category is being ranked as one. Like for example, you can see for the strategy. So it is also one of the cool use case. You can use the stream stats for ranking, for that matter, right? But yeah, it's a resource intensive command, and we really want to, if it we normally use if we are basically taking into account the live streaming data for last 5 or 10 minutes. Like in our case, we are trying to record the purchase of all the category IDs for the last 5 or 10 minutes, which is recording highest number of the purchases or which is recording the lowest number of the purchase, and then we are trying to rank them. Okay, so let's move on to the some other stuff. So we will be looking at a top and rare as well. So some, and we might be utilizing for our day-to-day purposes as well. So just give me a second. So for example, if we are really interested in the lowest two selling categories, we may want to use the rare command, right? So for example, rare and limit is equal to 2, and here I will be interested in category ID. So for example, here, I think it has given me the two categories, which is basically recording the lowest number of the purchases. And, so we, from here on, we might want to, deduce what is the reason for that. So for here, the null is also being, being listed in one of the categories ID. So for example, I can use here not null to exclude that particular thing. So I have listed categories as sports and simulation. Okay, so I think we had an opportunity to talk about in the practice, practice examination power user video. What is the difference between a not and is not equal. So for example, we can also use category ID not equal to null. So basically, it basically optimizes the search, because we know the difference, the not equal operator and the and not operator operates, right? So in our case, the result is same, but however, you may want to use not equal as an operator, in case of rather than not. So we have tried to list it, the lowest two selling categories, and in our case, sports and simulation is also one of them. So now let's try to tweak the scenario a bit. So for example, if we are really interested in what are the two products which have the lowest amount of the purchases in one of in every category, okay. So for example, rare. So we are interested in the products which has recorded the lowest number of the purchases. So rare product ID by category ID, and limit is equal to, so lowest two categories, so lowest the products which have recorded the lowest number of the sales by each category, or maybe I can limit it as 1. So for example, you can see, this is the product, in the category of accessories, which has recorded the lowest number of the purchases, and in the there is one particular product which has recorded the lowest number of the purchase in the category arcade. So we can also do that. So for example, if we are really interested in the products which the two products which has recorded lowest number of the sales in the similar category, we may want to just manipulate the limit as 2. We'll be changing the limit to the 2. So you can see these are the basically two products, which has recorded the lowest number of the purchases with corresponding to the accessories. Okay. Yeah, so now we will be looking at chart command. So I think we are okay with this. chart count by bytes. So sometimes I found the chart command is more useful as a transforming command with respect to with respect to the stats command, because it does allow us passing an argument in the form of span, right? So it basically helps. So we normally pass the span as an argument for time chart as well as chart. So for example, you may not be able to utilize this particular functionality, span. So if it is really important the way how you represent the data in the Splunk, so you may want to look at chart as a transforming command as an alternative to the to stats as in command. So I use it very often, just to if I am really interested in the way how we are representing the data before sending the reports or sharing the report or sharing our basically analysis with the others. Just give me a second. So also want to take an opportunity to demonstrate some other stuff. So for example, chart count, let's say over category ID, category ID by product ID. We always use over as a clause if we really want to split the results by a row, and we will be using by as a clause if we really want to split the result, if we really want to split the columns, right? So for example, the chart command always takes basically two fields. So always remember that. So we are passing two fields, category ID and product ID. So just have a look at the result and then we will try to compare. So for example, now you can see the results, right? So for example, by default, if we are not mentioning any kind of the limit here, so we will be having 10 columns by default, and all the other products will be categorized into the other category, right? So maybe for example, here maybe I will remove the null category, so we will have the null as well. So you can see there are two other columns like other and null, right? So we can always limit our result, and if so for example, we can also use some other arguments. For example, use other is equal to false, because we are not interested in the results of the other category. So for example, this column is removed. We can also use null is equal to false. So again, the others column is also getting removed, and we also want to limit the results to the, let's say, only 4 products, right? So maybe for example, limit is equal to 4. If you are not mentioning the limit in the arguments, you have by default 10 products will be listed by default, and all the others will be products will be categorized under the category which we have seen earlier, others. And if there is and for the null, we have already seen that there is also one particular column with respect to that. And so for example, we talked about in the latest the last video, the practice questions walkthrough for power user, that we can use, so for example, I can also use, for example, I can make a use of the by clause also, and the result will be same. I can remove it here, and again we will be getting the same kind of the result. And so for example, the result is pretty much of the same. So this particular question normally is getting asked in the power user question, the power user examination. The result is same whether we use over clause or so. And chart always accepts basically two fields, so category ID and the product ID. And if we are using the time chart, we can always use only one particular field after the by clause. So also remember that. However, stats can basically take stats can take the number of the fields altogether, so there is really no limit to that particular stuff. So for example, if we are using these stats, if I remove this particular action is equal to purchase, you can use the stats command. And for example, if you really want to take into account the action also, So here we can see the result. So we are basically seeing the count corresponding to the every combination of the category ID, product ID, and action. So you can see that. So for example, if I make it to the count, I will be getting an error. If I am using the chart command, I will be getting an error because it can only take two fields at max. So let us move on to the our next topic. So we were talking about the how to use eval and count together. So we'll be looking at some of the extremely good use cases. So let's say we are only interested in the okay, so we will be taking, so for example, in our case, basically we are looking at all the requests, what are the requests that are basically successful in establishing a connection with the server, and whether we are getting the client error or we are getting the server error. So here we will be using the, the combination of the commands like, eval. We will also be using the case. So for example, to club into the, to club into the major categories, because status will give us all the results, all the 400 errors, all the 500 errors, and we just want to club into some of the major categories, so we will be using case as a command. So let us look at our scenario. So for example, if we are getting the status is equal to 200, we will be categorizing as, we are getting the result as expected, okay. And if we are getting the result something like 400 or something, we'll be categorizing that particular stuff as in, the server error. And if we are also if we are getting the results, somewhere between 400 to 400 to 500, we'll be categorizing that particular stuff as a client error. If you're getting the status, say greater than that of the 500, we will be categorizing that particular stuff into the server error. So let us try to have a look at that particular stuff. So http status, and so we will be clubbing into the major category. So let's call it as https status category, okay, and is equal to, so case. So in the case, we will be clubbing into some of the major categories. So let's say our status is equal to 200, right? So if the status is equal to 200, the status is equal to 200, we will be calling the status as okay. Okay, and if the status, let's say if the status is greater than equal to 400, less than equal to 500, so we want to call that particular stuff as let's say a client error, okay. If and if the status is greater than that of the 500, status is greater than 500, so let's call it as a server error, okay. So this is done. So our case command is basically done. So we will be covering some other category as well. For example, in all the else cases, let's say not applicable, okay. So this is taken care of, and now I will be counting whatever the so whatever the field which we have just created, http status category, let's count by that, count by http status category, okay. So hopefully it will give me the result. Okay, so it is giving me the just give me a second. So I think we can also sort the result thereafter. I mean, so let us also try to look at one more use case for the eval count as well. So just give me a second. So we are trying to calculate how many how many get requests or how many post requests we have gotten till now. So let us try to use the the stats, eval and count all together, and let us see that how can we get the result like that. So for example, stats stats count and eval maybe the condition we are interested in. For example, the method is equal to, let's say, get. Okay, so this one as maybe a get request, and similarly count for eval, and method is equal to, let's say, a post in this particular case. And we are just trying to calculate, how many, I think I've done something wrong. So maybe as post request. Yeah, so I think we have calculated that how many HTTP get and how many post requests. So this is also one of the scenario how we can make a use of the the stats count and eval all together. So let us move on to the very last of our topic. So just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about so for example, always remember we normally use most of the time chart is one of the command we always use for the visualizations. If we are so with time chart we are always interested in the line or the area graphs. And we will be looking at pie chart, and we will also be looking at plotting multiple data series. So let us cover both the options and close the video. So, for example, if we are interested in the top two categories or top five categories, let's say top five category ID. So these are the top five category IDs. So let us try to have a look at the visualization. If I go to the visualization, you can have a look at the column chart also. And in this particular case, if you really want to have a look at the pie chart, you can do so. So it is basically giving you an overall idea. And we can always use, if we are not interested in the use percentage. Oops. Show uppers is equal to false if we are not interested in the showing the percentage, right? So it will only give us the count. So this is how, and let's since we have talked about the use case of the chart command, let us also try to have a look at the visualization. So chart and maybe count, let's say over category ID by let's say item ID. And so for example, let us try to do some of the stuff. We will do some little changes. So here I'm not just a second page. I will make it to the column chart only. So in this particular case, so for example, we have talked about it, if we are not giving any kind of the limit, the default option will be, there will be the 10 results by default, and we also can see the categories as other and null. So for example, we can pass on some of the arguments. For example, we have seen previously use other is equal to false, and maybe use null is equal to false. And let's say we are not interested in all the 10 categories. First of all, let us try to see, so for how does it look like in the visualization. You can see the data is little cluttered, right? So for example, if we are only interested in the 4 items per category, so we can use a limit as an argument also. So let's say limit is equal to 4. So now it is looking little much better in terms of the visualization. So we can see for the accessories, there are the corresponding item IDs, and we can also format this. For example, for in this particular series, it is being displayed. For example, we can make this particular into the stacked mode. So if that is making your visualization little better. So multi-series normally we use, we will not be using in this particular case. It is basically used, I mean, for example, some of the scenarios which I am able to recollect as of now. But So for example, that is okay. So for I will just put it multi-series as no. So this is the stacked mode, and if we really not interested in the stacked mode, we can make it like this also. So I think we have covered, so we are just trying to plotting the multiple data series here. So we have covered this particular example as well. And so let me know in the comments, I mean, do you feel this particular, share your feedback as well. And if you really like the video, please like, share and comment. And we will, and we will see you in the next. Thank you so much.